Hello and welcome to Searching for Pixels. My guest today joined YouTube in April 2015. Right now he has 16.7 million views on YouTube, just under 300,000 subscribers. It is none other than Lucas Raycevick. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. And that introduction kind of weirds me out because it's I've been doing YouTube a lot longer than in 2015. So to hear coming in with millions of views and that kind of thing, it's something that I definitely never would have expected at this point.
Yeah.
After doing YouTube for so long and large majority of it being a hobby. Since my teen years.
Well, when did you start YouTube? Because this information I pulled from your Facebook, not Facebook, your YouTube. Sorry.
That it was when I must have been 12. Yeah, I was 12 years old, and I was playing Halo 2 at the time because I just got Xbox Live for my birthday. That was the thing I got because. Long story short, my parents said you can't play games online, so then I just went to a friend's house and played there, and then they gave up, so I moved to that instead. And I was really influenced by Halo Montage creators, specifically the Halo God for his Untouchable montage, which is still probably the greatest ever made because it's just Halo 2 synced up to MC Hammer, and it's amazing. And I did my shitty inspiration of it, recording with a video camera and using iMovie on my mom's laptop. And that was the first, I did a Halo montage from that. And that was the first video I ever did. But I stuck with it from there and kind of just steadily learned the ropes, experimented with things, and eventually moved from making montages and being inspired by that to then doing game reviews. Those were just as bad. And steadily learned from there. And then I went on I guess the closest I ever got to a quote big break was being on a channel called GXP Tube years ago.
Okay.
And this was a channel that had me, a friend of mine, Nick, who I still talk with him on occasion to this day, a COD commentator who was good at gameplay, a guy who reviewed demos, and PewDiePie.
Oh, really?
Funny enough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, back when he had like 600 subscribers.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we were on this, all of us kind of combined to this channel so that I was the reviewer. We all had kind of our distinct roles. And that went from, when I joined it, it was about 6,000 subscribers. And then by the time it ended, it was about 15,000. And at the time, that was huge. Getting 10,000 views on a video was a huge deal for me back in those days. And I mean, many ways, it still kind of is. Whenever I do a video and, I have somebody like, my dad is very supportive, or like a family member or a friend, and they'll go like, "Oh, this one, didn't get as much attention." I go, "It got 120,000 views."
What do you want from me? Go.
It's the kind of thing. It's just like I would have killed for this when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I thought 10,000 views was a big deal back in the day. So to get 10 times that is insane to me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of. But that channel kind of fell through because anyone that's familiar with the machinima respawn structure knows that unless you were a very big deal at the time, if you were just kind of middle of the road like I was at that time, you might have gotten a couple thousand views, but it wasn't going to last for very long, and you weren't going to really stand as someone who's distinct from the dozens, if not hundreds of others of reviewers and commentators and COD players and stuff like that at that time. So it kind of fell through. I was dejected and moved to writing instead. And then after I did university, at university, I did doc studies, right?
Okay.
And your final for documentary is to do a 10-minute short film. That's like your final.
Right.
So when I got out of that and I finished that and I got a relatively decent reception, I'm personally not happy with it, but that's kind of just all my work from that time period. I decided it would be interesting to, right after doing that, make a video that is better than that film I did and twice the length, which ended up being the Call of Duty Has Lost Its Identity video.
Yep.
And that was something I just did as a hobby in my spare time, along with 2 other videos. And that's what eventually led to years later and Halo and Mass Effect and all that type of stuff, and inevitably my channel.
Yeah, because I was looking through your videos earlier on, and I sorted by the most popular. And the first video you made for this channel is how Call of Duty lost its identity. That's still the most popular video.
Which baffles me because for 2 years it sat at about 2,000 views, you know, from just a couple people, and I was relatively pleased with that because, you know, I didn't do a video at that time. You know, it was a brand new channel. I made the new channel because I just wanted a complete. I wanted to wipe the slate clean.
Oh yeah.
It was not really. I could have posted that on my old channel, which had about 1,000 inactive subscribers. So, you know, would have been basically the same thing. But it was more for myself than anything. I wanted basically out of university to make a channel where my goal was, okay, this Call of Duty video is going to be the benchmark. Every video from here on out is going to be either equal or it will surpass this video in terms of its quality. Because I was relatively pleased with it. I've still got some issues with it to this day, but it's mostly like technicalities. The overall point I'm pleased with.
Yep.
And its pacing and stuff like that. And also it uses, because of the rendering was screwed up. It's got way too much contrast, so some of the parts of the videos are just pitch black and you can't see shit. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, like when I saw that one exploding, that was a particularly weird case because that was after I did the Halo videos and a couple of other smaller videos on my channel. I think it seemed to be, that was right about the time just before Call of Duty World War II got announced.
Oh, really? So that's when it exploded.
Yeah, that's what it felt. That's what it felt like. At least if I'm remembering correctly, it was either that or when, you know, Infinite Warfare was coming out, and I noticed a big surge in viewership out of nowhere. And to this day, I still don't know it. Like, I remember I one time got a comment from someone asking me, how did you make your first ever video be the most popular? And I'm like, you missed the part for years where it wasn't being watched by anybody. If I could have made this intentional, I would have done it a lot sooner.
Yeah, maybe it just got shared on the right platform or something. Like maybe somebody on Reddit picked it up, it got to the front page, and you know.
That is typically what it is. You know, as much as I sometimes may mock, you know, with friends or whatever, like a website like Reddit. Or, you know, a page, you know, on it or something like that. At the end of the day, my channel and a lot of others like mine, we owe ourselves to people sharing our content like that. Because, yeah, the Halo stuff I did, that was at just a couple hundred views, maybe 1,000 to 2,000 for a long time, until I woke up one morning and then suddenly saw that the Halo 3 video had about 90,000 views, where last night it had about 9.
Wow.
And after seeing that was a bit of a shock. And when it started happening with the other videos, and then yeah, it kind of just went from there.
Is there still any evidence of your previous videos knocking about somewhere? Can people find them anywhere, or have they hidden away?
My friend Sparky already found a workaround, because in my Halo 3 ODST years later video, I show my old review of it from my old channel. However, the link is still in there. So if you have the patience to type in the entire YouTube link yourself, you can go and watch it. I think. I don't know if the video's been privatized since then, because like I just, you know, scrapped the old channel completely and just didn't really think about it. It's still technically up because there's some archives I want to keep there for personal reasons and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of evidence, it's that, and if you technically find the channel, which was called the Penguino, you can see the top 5 list I did for 2013. Yeah, very original content there. I really was kind of trying to find my footing for a long time, and you know, even I'm still not. When I look back on it, I'm still not very pleased with the Halo years later stuff, because I still felt like I was kind of trying to find my voice at that time.
Right.
And I think it's even evident in the videos themselves. Like the Halo Reach video is the weakest one of that selection, and it got by far the most negative reception, in part because I was still trying to find my voice, and I was like, you know, trying to experiment and see, okay, this one's make it maybe more aggressive, you know, more inspired by the likes of old stuff like AVGN or Jim Sterling or whatever it was at that time, or Rageaholic, and not understanding that that wasn't the right approach to take it. And even Mass Effect 1 has a little bit of that. I felt like when I get to Mass Effect 2 and 3, I feel like those are the videos that I actually start to become okay with.
Okay, that's when you found your footing in a way.
Yeah, that's when I felt like that's when I actually got, you know, a little bit confident in my work. I felt like with Mass Effect 3 in particular, because Mass Effect 3 in particular was the most satisfying, because in the comments, I knew how that game still angers people to this day to think about, and for a lot of reasons. And when I saw people in comment sections saying that they were going into the video pre-angry because of the subject of that game's ending alone was enough to tilt them, when they saw the video and they saw the atmosphere that BioWare was in, the reasons that led up to that, and other explanations and stuff like that, and also the sort of the greater issues of the game itself, some of them said that it gave them closure.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Because they finally no longer had this picture of EA coming over and stomping on everything and ruining things, just at the last minute, or BioWare, one idiot at BioWare screwing everything up. It was a big picture, collective bunch of it was a storm of issues, from the production side, from the development side, to the scheduling, to the marketing. It was a big storm that led up to that. And seeing that and being put in that position, I think people are just naturally empathetic to some extent. And I think that reason that video is the one that kind of is where I found my footing, is that I realized my videos are not about being objective or about being above anybody or anything like that. It was just about giving people information, and just about giving a perspective that is not meant to change their own, but meant to inform it, and meant so that if they happen to agree with my views or have their views changed by my work, that's fine, so be it. It's not the goal of my videos.
Yeah, another one that I particularly liked was the Spec Ops: The Line video 5 years later. That was a very
I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased with that one too.
Yeah.
No, I was really pleased with the way that one came. Not so much because of the research and information, because since then I did some further digging and talked to some people and found some information that didn't make it in there. Some stuff that would have been pretty vital. But I'm overall pleased with it, mainly because of the multiplayer portion. Because that was something I never got to do in the past, and it was so much fun. I still have some of that footage archived, and I don't think I'll ever get rid of that, because I'm probably never going to set up a multiplayer session again, because it was a pain in the ass.
Oh, really?
But yeah, it was just a good time to meet people and talk to people. A lot of the regulars on my Discord server came onto that, and we talked with each other since then, mainly because of that event. And it was a couple days, and it was something I never got to do before, was to revive a dead game that no one else in the world really cares about, and also doesn't really have a good reason to care about. The pointlessness of it all was kind of the point of it, and I thought there was kind of a if not a beauty to it, at least a curiosity to it.
Yeah, there are a few games after watching that video. I've got some own ideas of my own in my head that I'm planning to make some videos about, and there are some points I'd like to make about these games, but it requires multiplayer. I don't know if you've ever played Time Shift.
I have played a little bit of Time Shift, and that's you can't log into the servers of that game and get a deathmatch going.
No,
and that's something you need.
That one's gone.
That one's gone. It's something you need to. GameSpy has fucked up so many games for that. Like Battlefield 2 and 2142. Those are extremely difficult to get up and running these days. Crisis 2, I think you have to use a separate mod entirely to play the multiplayer at all.
Right, okay. I didn't know
that. Because the servers use GameSpy, and because there's a login screen there, you can't even make your own custom games without GameSpy. So you can't even go to the multiplayer menu to see what it was like back then. You'd have to do that on consoles.
Yeah. Oh, man. And with that particular video, the Spec Ops: The Line video, you had a lot of input from the community, from Patreon, from things like that. How involved did the community get in your video making process? So say you're on your Patreon, do you have a suggestion list, or how do you come up with the ideas for your videos?
A lot of the ideas for videos are all very personal to me. They're all sort of things that I've been thinking of for some time. I try as best I can to never do a video that is reactionary or based on new information. because I kind of want every video to be able to be watched at any point in time effectively. Even if it's even if there's some information on it, like my Rainbow Six video, Operation Tough Love, you know, something like that. You know, some of the stuff in it, like operators, base operators in that game costing money and stuff like that. That stuff may no longer be there, but it still serves as at least a stamp of when that existed. And also, a lot of the points I make still are applicable to the game to this day at the moment.
Yep.
So, you know, it's not like it's just completely, you know, gone or out of the water or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I try to make each video very personal to me. That's not to say the community doesn't have an influence. I mean, my Overwatch video essentially was directly influenced from the community, and you know was spawned from a particular comment in it. So they absolutely can have an influence on me, but that's the main thing, is that it comes from me first. I never do a video that is forced upon me or is something that I don't want to, like, I've gotten tons of requests, you know, to do, you know, Halo Wars, and I absolutely see why, because, you know, it's a game that is generally not really talked about in any sort of depth.
Yeah.
Not in video form in particular. But the reason I haven't done it, at least not yet, is that I've just not felt that I'm confident enough for it, because I'm not a fan of strategy games. I'm not an expert on them, and I was not somebody that really played the game all that much at launch too. So there's so many things against it for me to do it that I don't want to, even though there's so much requests for it. And yeah, I'm sure it would get me views and it would get me, you know, attention, stuff like that. And I'm sure some people would like it, but I want to, if I'm not going to feel satisfied with it the week after I do the video, I want to at least feel satisfied with it when I'm finished with it.
Oh yeah, it'd be a compromise otherwise, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So no, I'd want to leave that to someone else who's more attached to that game.
Yeah, and so let's say you've decided on a topic for your video. Let's go, I don't know, the orange box 10 years later. Or,
yeah.
Let's say, what's your process for going through to make that video? What would you do from, say, start to finish as a rough guide?
That was something I agonized over that video quite a bit.
Oh.
The benefit of the orange box is that 4 of the games are really short.
Yeah.
So that was the benefit of it, is that I could afford to play that game through and play the games through in their entirety, and also do a lot of levels on repeats and stuff like that, and try different difficulties and all that type of stuff. The process typically, when I finally decide on the video to do, I then just get straight to gameplay. And when I start gameplay, I try as best I can to not do research prior to that, because I find that if you do research prior to playing the game, it can kind of influence your view a little bit too much. You know, even though I might have already played Half-Life 2 and its episodes and Portal, I still try to get as close as I can to a player's mindset, and not a critic's or a researcher's or anything like that. I just want to play the game as is, and have my opinions informed by what I'm learning or what I'm believing in that moment of play. And the interesting thing that can happen there is that sometimes I'll sometimes formulate my own theories as to why X is good or why B is bad in the moment, and then I find some information in the research process after doing a game's playthrough that then changes that and alters the perspective and makes me either, you know, pleased or displeased depending on the information on what happened there.
Yep.
So, I mean, the most recent example in a video would be like Battlefront 2, where I'm playing through the game and I was really frustrated at a story twist that the game had. I twist in quotation marks. But then I stumbled upon an interview that didn't get much attention on SoundCloud. And this is a big part of the research process, is listening to interviews in the background while I'm doing other stuff, because it's just so tedious. It's like, you know, trying to find a pearl. You know, you're just, you know, opening oysters, just getting yard after yard after yard of just nothing. But occasionally you find a pearl, and in this case, I got information from a writer saying that they couldn't do a particular story direction because of it being a Star Wars game, of how it would affect the rest of the universe that is owned by Disney. And getting that information made me not like the twist that they did. It didn't make me like the execution. It made me understand it, though. And it put in context a lot of other reasons for the rest of the game's development. And I find that happens on probably the majority of my projects. So in the case of Orange Box, going back to the process, it's you start a playthrough of the game. If I do have time, I'll do the game, do the research always. Then if I have the time, I'll do a second playthrough. Usually if it's a shorter game, like Max Payne 3, I was able to do that, no problem. And then after that comes the writing, and the writing is by far the longest process because I agonize over a lot of things. I agonize over the information. I agonize over the pacing of the video because at the end of the day, it's a video. I don't want it to feel like it's dragging. If I'm going to make a video that's an hour, it's not because it's dragging. It's because there's just that much shit in there. That's kind of my attitude. That's why it's an hour. I never make a video that long, just, for the sake of it or anything like that. And then usually the writing will finish up after the deadline for editing is so close to a point where I have to edit it in that time frame or else it's not going to be able to get finished. I've noticed that I need to put myself in that sort of panic for it to get done at all, or else I just boot up Siege or whatever multiplayer game instead. Which is kind of unhealthy, but hey, I can afford doing it for now, I guess. And that is typically the process. Is like Orange Box. I was staying up. Orange Box nearly actually that video nearly put me into tears by the end because I had pulled multiple all-nighters at that point just to then get Adobe canceling the render at 99% consistently, multiple times. And I just wanted to be done with it at that point. I was so sick of the project at that point. I was sick of, having to use every single piece of music come from a Half-Life game. I was sick of the footage and the voice clips. I was tired of all of it. I wanted to just be done. Thankfully, the reception kind of made it worth it. And I think that's the usual pattern is by the end of the video, I hate it and I just wanted to be done. Then when I post it online, it kind of clears up for me. It sort of takes the edge off and it allows me to see kind of the video for what it is.
And it makes it all worth it when you get, that Orange Box has got over 1 million views by now as well.
Yeah, which is really cool because I feel like if there's any video that I would like to get that sort of attention, Orange Box would be one of them, except for 2 things. Well, 3 things. I could probably find a 4th if we had the time for it, but that's
Oh dear. And you said earlier that your background is you went to university and you did documentary. What was the title? What was the title of the?
I got a documentary studies certificate.
Oh, okay.
So I was there for 8 months. Just kind of my attitude to college was get in, get out.
And do you find you learned valuable things in those 8 months that helped you?
When it came to information, I learned that I really don't like working on set. I'm not that type of person.
Okay.
I learned that Avid is the worst piece of software ever made in history. And I learned buy your own DSLRs because rent camera equipment sucks. But aside from all joking aside, though, the main thing I think university did was mature me because prior to that, I think there's when I was at university and I started, if you look at my old content, like on the Penguino, like I mentioned earlier, it's very much informed by other people. And it's very much, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But even down to the structure and the presentation of it is not really a part of me. When I got to university, and when you go to university and you're having to, get everywhere on time yourself, having to eat everything yourself, having to, manage your finances, having to manage your schedules, having to work with different groups of people and different projects consistently, it forces you to find at least something within yourself that gives you that confidence to keep going forward. And I think that's what influenced me the most is that I feel like even though I was, 19 to 20 at that time, I felt like becoming 18 wasn't what made me an adult. It felt like going through university and like that was what aged me.
Oh, okay. That was the milestone.
That was what I felt like I was actually confident enough to do things myself.
Okay.
And yeah, I feel like that was a valuable lesson. It was less about the technicals. It was more about the emotional place that it helped me with. And that the main thing it really taught me in university is that, you go through, early parts of your life thinking that you're the one that's lost and everyone else is above you.
Yeah.
And going to university, really taught me that everyone else is just as terrified and just as and just as lost and just as empty as I was.
Yeah.
And to kind of take comfort in that, actually, because I feel like that's where working alongside people, that's kind of where the enjoyment comes from. The enjoyment kind of comes from all of you sort of having one piece of the puzzle and coming together to put everything together.
Yeah.
Or in my case, being a one-man show, me going on the search for those pieces.
Oh god, my dad would say the same thing. It's like nobody has any idea what they're doing, but somehow it all fits together and it works.
Yeah,
it just keeps going forward.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. I mean, it's the kind of thing, it's like I have those panic moments a lot of times where, I think that's probably the biggest analog was when I make videos today, I have those panic moments of like, I'm not going to be able to get this video done in time, or everyone's going to hate it, or the quality is just not good enough, et cetera, et cetera. And it all ends up kind of panning out. And I'm not saying like, oh, just don't do anything and everything will work out. No, force it, work at it. Do everything that you can to make that work. But know that when I'm in a bad place, know that I've gotten myself out of it multiple times before.
Yeah.
And also understanding that that bad place might be the reason I'm even able to have any sort of small, meager, whatever you want to call it right now, measure of success at that moment.
Yeah.
It can be a benefit instead.
Oh yeah, I mean, looking at it, it seems like it's all working out pretty well for you now, because it's going well.
It's going well for me now, and like my kind of general attitude is, I don't know for how much longer. I don't know, what's going to happen in the future. I don't think it's what I'm going to be doing, 10 years from now. But I mean, we'll see. And that's kind of, I really worry, about arrogance and about, thinking, believing your own hype and stuff like that. And I try as best I can to keep that measured. And I try as best I can to confidence and arrogance, you're on a thin line.
Oh yeah.
And I try to make sure that it's on the confident end and not the arrogant end.
Yeah.
When I get something wrong in a video, I don't try to, defend it or try to say like, oh, it had this purpose, or oh, it's this other person's fault. Like in my last video, I did a montage style cutaway with a bunch of flashes, and someone in my comment section mentioned hey, you could have given a warning for people with epilepsy, and it's like, and I was like, fuck, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Like,
was that the Battlefront,
and like,
Battlefront 2 video?
Yeah, yeah, it was. And like, I didn't think of it because, I didn't need to, for all this time. Back in the day, I just like, who the fuck's going to watch my content? That was kind of the attitude.
Yeah.
Now, knowing that you have an audience and knowing that you have people that trust you and stuff like that, it puts responsibility on you. And yeah, and that was something that, I then added a warning in the description and stuff like that, because, like I said, the videos, they're meant to entertain, they're meant to hopefully inform. And if they don't inform, they're at least, they'll hopefully give someone else a perspective that, again, aids their own.
Yeah, and how much, you talked about burden. Has there ever been a point where you felt like the burden is getting too much? Because looking at your Patreon, for example, you've got 366 Patreons, just under $1,500 a month. How much does that put a lot of pressure on you to make these videos? Has it changed the way you do it? Because say when you started with your Call of Duty one, that was, say, for fun or for your personal project, and now it's becoming more of a regular thing. Is that pressure ever gotten to you?
There's definitely been times where the pressure gets to me. There's definitely been times where I'm really pissed off that I didn't make a deadline, or got a piece of information wrong, or made a video that doesn't meet my personal standards. To make a deadline. However, there's a great line that Denzel Washington said at a interview he did at a director's roundtable, where he says that in his case, making a movie is a privilege. All the problems that he got to deal with, all the hard work and the agony and the pains of going through like that, it's an honor to be able to get to do that, and it's a pleasure to get to do that, and a lot of people would dream to get to do that. And I kind of feel something similar with doing YouTube. You know, for all the challenges that I've run into and for the occasions that pressure will get to me or whatever, I get to make videos that are essentially whatever I want them to be about. And, you know, I don't feel trapped to any particular game. I don't feel trapped to any particular structure or formula. Kind of the point of the channel that I'm doing is that it is different a lot of the time. And you don't know exactly what I'm going to do and what I'm going to say, you know, per project and per video. And that, to me, again, what I feel is privileged. I feel lucky to get to do that. And kind of a personal note is that my parents both came from the art world. You know, they were musicians, they were writers, they, you know, went to LA, they went through, you know, the system, they went through the industries, and the industry spat them back out. So when I went into, you know, doing YouTube stuff or doing, you know, writing or whatever it may be, you know, there was obviously some concern there, but they never discouraged me. You know, they just, you know, said, you know, have a backup plan, you know, do something else in the meantime, you know, have other means that you can go back on, but they never discouraged me from working on what I wanted to. And especially because it's working out, I do feel, you know, a need to keep this going for as long as I can. Hopefully not to the detriment of myself or the quality or the viewers or anything like that. But I want to keep it going, you know, because I feel like I sort of owe it to them. Because if I didn't, and if I just treated this like I fucking deserve it, and I, you know, that, I'm entitled to this or whatever, I feel like I'd be really insulting them. And I feel like I wouldn't be living up to, I feel like I wouldn't be respecting them. And I don't think I could really bear that.
And do you have any ideas of where you might be in, say, 10 years' time? Because I watched an interview that you gave, I don't know if you gave an interview to somebody who was in college, and they had to do I was listening to that, and you said that you did some writing in the past. So I'm just thinking, say you did the writing in the past. You're obviously a very talented writer. You make these videos now.
Thank you.
Is there anywhere that you're, say, looking to go towards in the future that you have in mind?
Well, I appreciate the decent writing comment. I mean, it's something I agonize over a lot.
Oh, it's fantastic. It clearly has a structure. I mean, the one thing I think about with these, particularly, there's definitely particularly you, and there's people like Noah Gladwell Gervais. Oh God, I got to think on the spot now. Let me check my YouTube. Who does those very long videos? Matthew Matosis,
Joseph Anderson. Yeah, Matthew Matosis.
Yeah.
I'd say Bunny Hop is the biggest influence, Super Bunny Hop, because that was the channel. Yeah, that was the channel that taught me that. Because the way you would go to a Super Bunny Hop review and it wouldn't open with, "Here's the crew. It comes out. It's available for the Xbox 360 and PS3.
Yeah.
It's made by Ivory Tower and published by Ubisoft." It opens with a story. It opens with him, you know, a question for the audience, and that's kind of what I try to, you know, sort of follow, you know, or be inspired by. A very dear friend of mine, you know, she told me that whenever you're writing anything, be it an essay, be it a novel, be it a TV show, you have one job, and that is to make the viewer ask a question.
Oh yeah.
If you have made a TV pilot or you started a video or whatever, and you haven't gotten the audience to ask a question, then you're not engaging them. You haven't done a job. You haven't given them something to pursue. Yeah, and that's kind of, I try as best I can to never force it. You know, never make the writing, you know, try to force a narrative that isn't there or anything like that. But just try to make. I believe you can make a story out of anything, or there's a story anywhere you look. And I try to basically just present a story as best I can. Yeah,
because the thing with YouTube as well, because it's such an open platform that, you know, so many people, anybody can make a video. The thing that differentiates, say, your videos and Super Bunny Hop and the people we just discussed is, to me, it feels like it's writing first and then it's a video, rather than somebody just making a video and trying to write about that, you know?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where, you know, if I would never post a video. I don't think I would ever post a video on my channel that is, you know, just off the cuff or, you know, in the moment or off the top of my head or anything like that, because I just don't trust myself. And it's a partially that, and it's also, there's so many other people that can do that and have a more immediately nuanced view than I can, you know, in the moment, that I just don't really feel the need. And it's a kind of thing, it's like, you know, a lot of people, when Battlefront 2 was coming out, a lot of people were asking me, "Are you going to do a video when it comes out on launch?" And I'm like, "No, because I mean, I did a video complaining about Siege's microtransactions. What do you think my opinion is on Battlefront 2's launch? How that all worked out. And I mean, I did a video, you know, a year later anyways, you know, when the game was at a fraction of a cost and when the hype of that storm really died down. That's the main thing I never like getting involved with. I never like being in the middle of a bandwagon or storm. I never like being in a situation where we don't have all the information yet. And we have a lot of people that have a lot to gain by pretending to act like they do.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's something I try as best I can to not serve. I don't want to serve misinformation. All I try to give is a perspective and, you know, take it or leave it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And so, mentioning George from Super Bunny Hop, very inspiring writer and video creator. Is anybody else who you find particularly, I say the word inspiring, but thought-provoking? I hate the word inspiring. It sounds so cliche.
Yeah, it's a bit cliche, but I mean, it's still applicable. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of content that I quite like. Here, I gotta confirm. I've talked about him on my channel before. I gotta confirm this guy's name. You can probably just cut this down in the interview section.
No way.
Interview. Okay, yeah, I apologize. I'm not going to be able to find this. Actually, the off-camera show. That's a big. I love that program because basically it's how I would personally want to run a talk show. It's with Sam Jones, the guy's name, and it's him talking to celebrities like, you know, Robert Downey Jr., Ron Howard, you know, all those types of people, Andrew Garfield, but they're very oddly personal conversations. And, you know, they're not there to promote something, you know, and that's the main thing. And they're very separated from the world that they live, from the world that those actors are in constantly, or directors. And that's kind of what I try to do, is I try to sort of use retrospect to my advantage, you know, because they always say, you know, hindsight is 20/20. So when I do, I'll be honest, when I first did those videos, the main reason was because I didn't have the money to do recent video game reviews. So, you know, I have a large gaming library, so I thought might as well use it and talk about this shit. But, you know, there's a lot of other benefits too in terms of making videos. And the benefit of making a retrospect piece is that you are not burdened by a lack of information in the moment, and you're not burdened by other people influencing you, because especially if it's an older game, you know, who else is talking about it in that immediate moment? One of my favorite things about when I finish a video is that I feel like I then have permission to go watch other people's content on that piece. And get their perspective and all that type of stuff. So, you know, like after I did my Prey video, the first thing I did was go to Joseph Anderson's video, because I'm like, I can finally watch it and not feel like if I do this video, I'm just going to be ripping Joseph Anderson, because, you know, we think we're invulnerable to that. You know, a lot of people think we can avoid that and dodge that, but we get influenced by people. It's just nature, you know, and cryptomnesia, I believe it's called, you know, where we think we've made up information that is our own when it's actually from somewhere else. You know, that is a part of a lot of people. I believe I remember a scientist saying that it's not just something, it's not just natural, it's necessary. You know, if you think about, you know, humanity's survival way back, you know, how to make the fire is more important than who came up with the idea to make the fire. But unfortunately, in a modern world that is based on, you know, copyright and capitalism and all that type of stuff, you know, it's a very different, you know, there's a lot of concerns, and there's a lot of valuable concerns there. So I try as best I can when I do a video on a game. It's going to be something that I'm interested in, so there's that. It's not going to be directly informed by other people. You know, it can be something like, oh, I played this game with a friend and it made me want to do a video on it. It's not, oh, I watched 8 videos on this and now I want to do it. If anything, if I watch 8 videos on a subject, it makes me not want to do it, because it's already been, because I figure, what can I add to this conversation that hasn't already been covered?
Have you ever done any like official collaborations with YouTubers with videos like this, or do you plan to in the future at all?
Never. Currently, I've done no official collaborations. I've had, you know, people appear. I've had Shammy appear in my videos, Mandalore, Red Angel. I had recently my friend Clue show up. I've had, you know, Axikins. I've had Sparky. I've had, you know, people on there. And I plan to. Quiet Shy was one of my favorites. She was amazing in the Warframe Q&A.
Oh, right.
Some people believe that's me, by the way.
Oh, really?
Even though it flashes special guest, and it's anyone that knows the Warframe community knows it's Quiet Shy. Yeah, some people still think it's me with a voice changer. Why, I have no idea. But yeah, I mean, that's usually the collaboration I like because it's small. It's not in the way. It doesn't disrupt the video or anything like that. Because if I do a collaboration, I want it to be necessary. I don't want to do it, you know, just for the sake of it. That's not to say that I would never do a collaboration. I mean, very possible I could do one in the future.
Yeah.
I never try to write anything off the table like that. But that is typically the reason why I just have small cameos rather than full-on collaborations.
Yeah, I did an interview with Mitch Kramer from Heavy Eyed. And
I know Mitch.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. Very nice guy. And
really nice guy. He's a really good content creator too.
Yeah, I was speaking to him about his process for making his videos, and he does a lot of sharing of the scripts. So he'll write a script and he'll pass it on to another YouTuber, possibly it may be Mark Brown. I think he talks with quite a lot. So they review each other's work, which is quite interesting. Because to me, like when I think about these videos, I think there's a one-man show, you know, a lot of the time. But it seems like the community is rather behind the scenes. They can be quite involved as well.
Yeah, I think I've gotten really lucky in a lot of ways, and one of them is the sector of YouTube I've found myself in. You know, talking to people like Mandalore, Shammy, Heavy Eyed, all those people, Leonardo da Vinci, et cetera, et cetera. All those people, nearly all the people I've talked to are super nice. They're very open. They're very honest in their critiques. Because I think what we do is that I think we ultimately value. We spend our lives, you know, talking about things that we love or we don't love but want to, and you know, we put this work into trying to showcase the depth of games and the work that goes into games and the people behind them, that we don't want to get that stuff wrong. You know, we want to value that stuff. So I think that's why, you know, Heavy Eyed will and Mark Brown will agonize over a script like that. I do that same thing. I don't really send my scripts out very often. Orange Box I did share with somebody, a friend of mine, Sergeant Strawberry, who also appeared in my Warframe video. She went over that. I've had another friend of mine, Axikins, help out too on projects. So it's not that it never happens. It's just kind of, it's a case, I do that when I'm completely lost.
Okay.
And like, I'm sort of grasping at straws at that moment. I've kind of realized recently what I typically do in my process of writing is that I will write a script. It has sort of the rough idea of what I want, but it doesn't have the structure. And then I'll write a second script where it gets a little bit closer, then a third script where it's finally got everything I want in the order I want. Because particularly after the backlash on Halo Reach, I was really inspired by an interview I saw with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Sam Harris. I don't really follow the two's individual work that much, so it's not like I'm a big fan or anything like that. But I listened to a really interesting conversation they had where Neil was criticizing Sam for not being in the same lane as the person he was talking with. And he said that because she's the guest and you're the host, it's like a rear end collision or passing in basketball. Like in basketball, if you pass the ball and your teammate doesn't catch it, it's your fault, no matter what, because you're supposed to ensure that there is no tangible way for that to happen. Same thing with a rear end collision. And when you make a YouTube video or any piece of writing, actually, you are trying as best you can to make sure that there is no way that an audience can misinterpret what you're saying. Now, that doesn't mean you can make it bulletproof. There is no way to make it completely bulletproof. You're always going to get someone that will misinterpret it. You always will get someone who will maliciously try to change what you're saying and stuff like that, or not understand it. That's always going to happen. But you want to minimize that as much as you can. And after I realized that, I think that's why, personally, in my opinion, I think the videos in the Halo series that are the best are by far 4 and 5, because I think they much more take into consideration that perspective. They consider the viewers a lot more than the earlier works, and they're not as focused. I really cringe when I use the word objective in those videos, because I've kind of just dropped that phrase completely since then, because it's a load of bullshit and you can't be objective and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's like to me these days when I make videos, it's not about objectivity, it's about fairness. And it's about, is what I'm saying, be it positive or negative, is it fair to the creator, what they wanted, and what the situation allowed them to have?
Yeah, and that, going back to your Mass Effect 3 video, that's probably why that was, like, why you were saying that's your most prized one, because it had that other perspective, but it was a fair perspective.
Yeah, like I wasn't saying, oh no, guys, BioWare's ending is great. Yeah. No, fucking Mass Effect 3 is one of the worst endings I've ever seen. But I think you can say that and still have respect for the developers and what they went through. Yeah. And I think you can also understand that, you know, even if you were to remove the anger that you get from it, even if it may be valid, because, you know, you spent $60. We all work hard in our fucking lives. Yeah. They made 3 games in the past. They made promises. Of course you can be upset about that. There's nothing. That's what I try to do. Is I don't try to say, like, oh, you're wrong for feeling that way. You know, how you feel is how you feel. We can't control that. That's why all I try to do is, you know, give a piece of information that will maybe make them feel differently about it.
And with your Call of Duty video, it's 3 years old now.
Yeah.
You had there's a quote in it. You said, Call of Duty is a shell of its former self. 3 years on, do you still agree with that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's... Me and some people on my server were actually recently talking about how, you know, Black Ops 4 is quite the interesting case. Here's the thing. I think Call of Duty will never stop being fascinating, you know, just as an entertainment product and how it's received and how it keeps going. But the games themselves, yeah, to me, I just don't really see them as that particularly special anymore, because we have other games, we have other creators, we have, you know, other things that, in my opinion, Call of Duty just hasn't really caught up on. And again, I don't really even exactly fault the developers for that, because, like, for instance, the one that comes to mind is my review for Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, where to me it seems pretty clear when playing that game that it is not a traditional Call of Duty game in its construction. It's not, here's the multiplayer that's going to keep you engaged, here's the single player that is kind of just thrown together, and then here's, you know, the co-op, whatever. It feels more like a campaign game, and that really threw me off. And thinking about how the position that developer was in, even if it really was, they wanted to make a campaign game, they weren't in the position to, and it definitely affected that product.
Yeah, it's. I think it's also related to another video you did with regards to Battlefield 1, and there was something you said in that which it clicked with me quite a bit. You said you won't experience games like Battlefield 1 with a fresh perspective again. And
yeah,
to me, it's like if I play a new Call of Duty, or if the new Battlefield comes out, or Fortnite, or whatever it is, that's not this. It will never be the same as when I first played Call of Duty 4, or when I first played Halo 2, or first played Halo 3, whatever. It's just not the same anymore. Yeah, and maybe it's just growing old.
It just it just won't. And I think that's what really affected a lot of people. Like I think something that's gonna. I don't want to make any predictions, but I have a sneaking suspicion that when the current craze, which is Battle Royale, kind of fades down, I don't think it'll ever go away completely, because Minecraft hasn't gone away completely.
Gotcha.
You know, multiplayer hasn't gone away completely or anything like that. You know, trends, you know, they usually stay for at least a little bit. They just don't become #1 anymore. But when the Battle Royale thing kind of dies down a bit, I think people will look back on stuff like the original, you know, King of the Kill, or, you know, Hunger Game, Minecraft, or PUBG. I think they will look back on it fondly, not merely for the experience itself, but for the experience of playing something new that first time. That initial hook, that hook of, wow, I have never actually played a game like this before. That is distinct to people, that is special to people, and it's something that, especially with this model that games are going in of games as a service in the AAA space, is something that is going to happen less and less, and it already does.
Yeah. And when you were when you're doing your videos, you said how you don't like to get not anybody else's opinion, but you want to go in with a fresh slate, really. So you want to play the game and make your decision. Is there any game that you say you knew a little bit about, but you were surprised about it, so you thought, okay, this game's probably going to be rubbish, but it turned out to be really good, or this game's probably going to be really good, but it turned out to suck?
Get Even, the video I did on that. Yeah, that video was pretty good because I went in to Get Even with virtually actually very low expectations, because of the game I played before then, which is I kind of incorporated that into the video. And that's typically what I try to do as well. When I'm feeling a particular way, I try to, explain that and sort of give that the context, because context is everything in YouTube content. If you don't build the context properly, you're very likely to lose the audience anyways. So yeah, the game Get Even, I went in there with relatively low expectations despite a lot of praise that game got because of what I played before. And I'm like, how the hell can this company go from that to that in one game? And then I played it, and then I realized, and I thought, and the answer I got was even weirder than what my prediction was, because the answer was, this gameplay is fucking horrendous, yet I stayed up all night to finish it in one go. And so I thought, that's even weirder. Okay, let's explore that, and let's get down to why the reasons that are. I think that's another case too of like, when I experience something like that, I want to get to the reasons why. When I had a collection of 1,000 games on my computer, and then I ended up staying up all night to finish Nightfire, a game from my childhood instead, I wanted to go, why the fuck am I doing that? And that's what led to the video. I kind of tried to, sort of resolve the mystery more from my own personal game than anything, like more of my own personal curiosity than anything. I'm just like, why did this game hook me? Yeah. Because I'm a pretty jaded person. It's not easy for a game to get me like that.
And what are some of your favorite games? We'll say series. Let's make it a bit easier. I'll give you series.
A series that I've always loved and is going through a real struggle right now is definitely Battlefield. I've loved the Battlefield games for some time. The Mass Effect series, quite obviously. But as I talked about in those videos, I kind of realized I much more love the universe than I love the games themselves.
Okay.
Burnout, which is the most recent video I did, I absolutely adore that series, and I miss it so much. And that's the thing, is I think years later for me is going to become a lot more challenging when I start getting into the territory of games that I don't have as personal of a connection to. Like, the Orange Box terrified me for a multitude of reasons, one of them being that I played TF2 pretty casually and only for 1 or 2 years. Right. And I knew that it had gone through significant changes. I knew that it had this pro scene that I had absolutely no knowledge of going in. Compared to Halo 2, where I knew that game backwards and forwards. Even stuff that I didn't participate in, I knew about because I was, interested in it. So I was ultimately pleased with how Team Fortress 2 came out, and it relieved me to hear veterans of that game come to me and say, no, you got a lot of stuff right. It's okay. Yeah. That really, that was an utter relief to hear that. Oh, right. But yeah, that's going to be something that I think will come up later, and something that will do that, is to talk about games that I may have a bias against going into. And the thing that I think will be interesting when that comes is I will still try as best I can to keep that fairness. Right. Okay. But yeah. Take a video that, make a video where, yes, if you were to talk to me personally and I was like, maybe just had like a soda and a beer in my two hands, I'd just be like, yeah, fuck that game, it sucks or whatever. But, in the context of a video, that's not particularly interesting. And for me, as someone who tries to write, it's not particularly interesting to think about either. And I know, and I especially know that from doing videos and how games are made, that there's always going to be more to it than that. There's always going to be more to bad games bad because bad. So I try to, as best I can, to talk about that and sort of use that as a way. Because what I've definitely realized with videos is the subjectivity can actually make the thing interesting, because subjectivity is what makes it relatable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if your perspective is completely the opposite of a viewer's, the fact that you have a perspective that differs at all, it's relatable. You can relate in your differences. You know, because we've all been there where we're talking to someone else that does not share anything that we discuss. And it's not their fault. They have their own valid reasons for doing so. So using that as a way to talk about games in a video, I don't think is a disadvantage or a bad thing at all. I think it's actually an opportunity.
Yeah. Will you find that you'll have to, say you do a game 10 years later, but it's not one that you have very strong attachments to? Are you going to have to change your approach to your writing, do you think? Because I mean, you could have a disclaimer, but you know, that's how much do you think you'll have to change your approach to writing for that video to compensate for that?
I think the structure can be pretty similar, because the structure itself is, you know, it's not really, the structure itself isn't baked into my personal opinions. And it's also pretty modular. Like in the case of Mass Effect, for instance, you know, I changed, you know, Mass Effect 3, you know, I reversed the order that we talked about stuff, because the game is very different and puts its focus, its center of attention on a lot of different things from previous games. So it's something that I don't think the structure will be a problem. I don't think that will really change that much at all, or at least it won't change in ways that that viewers are not used to.
Yeah.
In the series, if you know what I mean, because each of the years later kind of have their own little quirks and stuff, and that's by design. I don't want any years later video to just be identical to another from start to finish. I do think my approach in playing them will be very different.
Okay.
And I think that will come up because I want to do a series on Metro with the new game coming out. And that's a very interesting one, because Metro 2033 was a game that I wanted to love but just couldn't, and then fell in love with Last Light. So I think that'll be very interesting with both those games to see sort of how my opinion goes with that.
Oh yeah, very nice. I look forward to that one. I did enjoy the Metro games. And I can't remember, it's a long time since I played them, but they were good. I did enjoy them.
Yeah.
They reminded me of like in my opinion, it was a more accessible Stalker, I suppose.
Yeah, to me, they have the character and the personal touch that stuff like Half-Life or Brothers in Arms or whatever used to have. It feels like those series, maybe not in gameplay, but in terms of just how they feel and how they're constructed. They don't have the corporate feel that a lot of AAA games these days have.
And did you ever make a video when you received any particular backlash that you weren't expecting from any of your opinions on a game?
The Halo Reach one is the most obvious one that comes to mind, but that was not that. I would say in that case, it wasn't so much me not expecting it, or more me just being ignorant. Okay, right. Yeah, it's more like that was like on me, you know, kind of thing. It was on me for not constructing the video properly and all that type of stuff. The one that, I can't really say there's been a backlash that I didn't expect, at least so far, you know, thank God. I'm sure it'll happen at some point, because it's happened to other, you know, smarter people than me. And I welcome when that happens, because if I make a video and there's a big problem with like that, then if there's a backlash, so be it. You know, worse things have happened, you know, as long as, you know, the complaints are valid. And, you know, and I think, you know, it's pretty common for me to have my viewers disagree with me on a video, but because I think the videos are fair, and because that's what I try to go for with them, people are usually fair in return, and they're usually pretty constructive in their feedback. Yeah, I was just wondering about, say, Max Payne 3, for example, because just because of the nature of the game itself, because it seemed so polarizing when it came out, you know. Yeah. Did you receive any? Were people quite fair in that for their views? I think people were very fair, and like, I mean, in that reception, and even people that don't like the game. Like, one of my personal favorite channels, you know, for some time has been Examine Life of Gaming, a smaller channel, and I've followed his content for years, and like, it was quite surreal for me to watch his latest video where he opens up going, After watching the Raycevick Max Payne 3 video, I had to reinstall it, which made me extremely angry and want to play better games instead. And I thought that is so in his character. That is so something he would do. And it's so fucking weird that he's referencing me in this case. Because, yeah, like I was so, not... I always consider myself to be a viewer first rather than a creator, because that's what I did for years. And it's kind of funny where, sometimes I'll comment on a video and people be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah.
And I've been like, I've been here for years. This is what I've done. I've done this for years. I just make content now along with watching with other people.
And what are you playing right now? When you get time after making all these videos?
I'm not working. I don't have plans to do a video on it right now, but it's actually frustrating because I want to, I'm playing Dragon Age Inquisition right now to inform Mass Effect Andromeda, because when I played Andromeda at launch and enjoyed it, I already recognized the two games were extremely similar. So I'm trying to play through Inquisition right now, or at least get some playtime on it to kind of inform just how similar the games truly are and if there's any more depth to that. Yeah. And if it's worth discussing and structuring a video around. But Dirt Rally has been stealing my attention a lot, because that game is basically my childhood in HD.
Oh wow, lovely.
I love that game to death right now. And Forza Horizon 4 came out, and I loved 2 and 3, so I got 4, and that's been tempting me quite a bit. And then the biggest surprise recently was, you have to go to my recent game just to ensure the name, Ring of Elysium.
Ring of Elysium? I haven't...
It's a PUBG clone made by Tencent.
Oh,
and that sounds
God.
fucking horrible. It sounds terrible.
That sounds awful.
I heard free-to-play early access, PUBG ripoff, and I thought, let's play this for the laughs.
Ugh.
And then I played it for 3 hours straight. And then next day I played it for 3 hours straight again. And it's actually, currently in the moment, it's a really well-constructed game. It has the exact same setup and structure as PUBG, but everything feels better because all the animations, all the guns, all the movements, they all feel like 10 to 15% faster. There's a lot of little tiny quality of life improvements, like when you pick up, like basically you don't have to micromanage your inventory. When you pick up an attachment for your gun, it just automatically attaches it. But you can still take it off, and also there's keys when you're aiming to change scopes that are available, which is fucking awesome. When you get into vehicles, it just automatically puts you in the driver's seat if you're playing solo. If your bandages don't restrict you to 75% health only. There's a lot of little quality touches like that. And there's also some really fun gameplay elements too. Like when you start the game, you can select between an ice pick climber, a snowboard, or a hang glider.
Okay. And
all of them have some, not just fun gameplay applications, but also some actual tactical strategies. Operator Drewski, he opened up his video on the subject of, he saw someone else ziplining, so he hang glided to where they were and killed them while they were on the zip line, and they couldn't do anything. So yeah, the game really shocked me, and kind of at the moment I'm playing it quite a bit right now because I feel like Tencent's gonna ruin it. Just based on previous experience. Yeah. So I feel like that's gonna be good. So at the moment I'm kind of just playing it and enjoying it for what it is right now.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. But although I tried to avoid anything Tencent though, because I used to live lived in Beijing for about a year, and
oh god,
they use WeChat as a form of communication. That is, you have to use WeChat. Like there's no other choice. But the government uses it to spy on you.
And I know that Wii game is being used as a Steam competitor over there, and that there's even been talks to bring that to the West.
Oh god,
which would be quite fascinating.
But I'd never trust Tencent because the government spies, they honestly do. It's bad. Yeah. So I'd like to play it, but Tencent.
I know. That's the thing. So it's kind of like, if people don't want to go for Tencent, I totally understand, but I didn't even know that when I was going into it. I just booted the game up and went, wow, I'm actually enjoying this. So I'll just, play it until it's funny because there's been people some people try to say that it's spying on you, and I don't know the validity of that yet, because so far the consistency seems to be either people that had an earlier beta or people that use AVG virus, which is like one of the weaker antivirus softwares. that seems to be the only people that get flagged. I run a pretty sophisticated antivirus and it doesn't flag anything.
Right.
So I don't think that's the case yet. It wouldn't surprise me if Tencent's doing some shady shit with the government, because as for the reasons you mentioned.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of fascinating in a weird way, though, where I'm playing this game, I'm enjoying it, but because of the people behind it, I don't trust to enjoy it, say, 2 years from now.
Oh god, yeah, they'll ruin it somehow. I mean, they'll try to cater towards the Chinese market, and
yeah, who knows? Maybe that's even tickling some ideas in my brain right now. Maybe I'll even make that into something later.
That could be pretty good. Yeah, that could be a fun one. And are you able to possibly give us any details on what you've got in the works at the moment, or is that a guarded secret?
I don't want to. It's more like I don't want to tell anything right now, just in case it changes.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, that's the main reason. I do have. There's plenty of ideas I've had on the table, and then I don't come to for a year.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Have you got like a list, like a document of ideas?
I actually, very funny when you mentioned that. I very recently was feeling starved for ideas, but then I break out the notebook and I start writing down ideas, and then inevitably I had 2 pages full, and I went, oh, okay, never mind. I do have plenty of ideas to work on. False alarm.
Dear. And have you ever thought about moving into the voice acting side of things? Because when I listen to your videos, like, you have a very characteristical voice. It's, you know, very definitive. It's a lovely voice.
Oh, thank you.
And I was thinking, I wonder how much he edits that, you know. But we're talking now, and you just sound just like your videos. So,
well, it's like I do some very subtle noise removal and slight bass boost just to make it feel warmer, if you know what I mean, like kind of like a sort of a radio type of thing, because it's what a lot of radio programs do. I haven't really considered voice acting though, because I feel like I don't really have much range.
Okay.
And there's also just some personal things that I've been going through recently. Like, one of the things about my voice is that it's quite inconsistent.
I see.
Which is quite infuriating when I'm narrating. One of my favorite things about moving into this space here is that I don't have to change the recording setup every time. When I was living in a small apartment about a year or 2 ago, I would have to, you know, use a different stand, usually because my stands were books, and I'd have to change the microphone position. One video I'm using a sock as a pop filter, the other one I'm using something else. You know, I had to duct tape a pop filter to the microphone one time, you know, all this shit. And yeah, now to have, you know, just a standard boom arm, you know, some padding on the walls, it sounds relatively consistent in videos, even when I do record on separate days. So yeah, that's a nice thing to have. But yeah, no, in terms of voice acting, I haven't really considered it at this moment.
I know your pain. I moved to Canada just over a month ago. I'm in Montreal at the moment, and I was living in a hostel, and I was arranging to do interviews on this YouTube channel, but I was like working out like when everybody else in the room was going to go. So I've got this microphone like set up on the top bunk of this bunk bed. Me looking at this microphone, like there's trying to shut all the windows, but it's on a main street, so the cars are going past. And I mean, now I've moved into my own flat, but I'm in the basement floor of like a noisy apartment.
That's the thing is, that's the thing. It's like that's something that when. Because, you know, you initially have that fear of like, ooh, am I changing stuff too much? Is this too artificial? Because, I mean, there are times where, you know, you listen to a YouTube video or listen to something and you're like, that's bullshit. That is not what that guy actually sounds like. That is not how they what their real attitude as. Yeah, like that kind of thing. Like, God, I've seen some videos where they just augment this. They overproduced is a word for a reason.
Yeah.
And it does apply to some people, much more in the professional music industry more than anywhere else. But yeah, there's an old one of my favorite musician, Clayton. He had a great exit. No, not even him. His producer in a behind the scenes video had a pretty amazing saying that I've lived by since then, even though this guy very clearly was just saying it, you know, just because it's what he believed. It wasn't meant to be a speech or anything. He just said, you're as good as you can edit yourself to be. And it's true, like that, and that's what I live by. When, you know, hey, you know, does this microphone sound decent? Okay, they don't need to know that it's stacked on 6 books, has a sock on top, and I've edited the shit out of this to get out all of the wrong takes, all of the pauses for breath and shit.
Yeah, no one needs to know.
No
trade secret, man. And at the end of, I'll ask one more question and I'll let you go. So I've got one more question for you. At the end of your videos, you always have these questions from your patrons, which are very interesting, peculiar. Is there a particular favorite that you've had from this?
A particularly favorite question. The one that's most notable is the Snoop Dogg cover. I know it's not my personal favorite, but that's the one that I know people will probably go to.
I forgot about that one. That was a good. That impressed me. I was like, damn, he's actually going for it, man. Nice, right on, man.
Well, that to me was the fun of the Q&A, though. Is I feel like that is a way to sort of diffuse any seriousness that might be in a video, and without discrediting the video, if you know what I mean. It's the kind of thing where the video can still make a point. It can still be relatively serious if it calls for it, but people can still have fun with it. And the main thing too is I wanted there to be a reason for an ordinary viewer to stick after the video is done without donating on Patreon. Because I think we've all been there, where, there's plenty of creators I like that when the Patreon credits come on, I just turn the video off because there's nothing for me. And I don't feel insulted or anything like that. It was just the kind of thing where when I was making my content, I'm like, why don't we try this and see how it goes? And it kind of stuck.
Yeah, it works. It's interesting. I stick around for them. That was such a good cover, man. It was so good.
Thank you. I'm gonna use that to kickstart the rap career.
Oh, good. I forgot about that. Well, thank you very much for your time, Lucas. It's been a lovely chat.
Thank you for being an absolute pleasure to talk to.
And if you ever want to play a game or if you ever come to Montreal, hit me up, man.
Absolutely.
I'll host you. Don't worry. Cheers. Thank you.